Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
I thought you were gonna say timber, like a like a tree falling down. Yes, that's right.
I'm sorry, trees falling down. Yell timber. What was that?
Yeah, when when the lumberjacks are chopping down a tree,
Yes,
they usually yell.
Yes, the lumberjack yells timber.
Yeah.
You said, I thought you were going to say timber, like a tree falling down.
Well, that's when the tree is committing suicide. It doesn't want to live anymore. It just tips itself over.
Everyone betray me. I'm done with this world. Timber. Do you know what's funny? As I was watching the movie, sometimes I'll look at IMDb and just look at the actors, see what else they've done maybe in the meantime, especially for older movies. And the second movie for the main actress here, Camille Keaton, or well, technically the third movie, but whatever. It's a film called Savage Vengeance, and on the poster for this, it says, I will dance on your grave. And I'm like, I feel like you're trying to capitalize on the one sort of known thing she's been in, is my guess there. So what's interesting is that there's actually a sequel came out to I Spit in Your Grave this year, and it's a sequel to the original film that stars Camille Keaton.
Interesting. Okay.
It's called I Spit in Your Grave Deja Vu, but that is not to ignore the fact that there was a remake and then two sequels to that remake. So there was a fifth I Spit in Your Grave out this year. There's 5 of these sumbitches now.
Wow.
Which basically means that without realising that we are starting a new franchise today, which is unfortunate because we have a lot to finish franchise-wise, but here we are.
At least it's a really fun franchise.
It's a really fun, light-hearted franchise that's not uncomfortable to watch in any way, shape, or form. It's a light breezy day in the movie watching.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, our patrons, there's some sick puppies voting for this one. My gosh.
I mean, it's a pretty iconic movie, at least for its reputation and title. So, like, we're going to have to do it at some point. I mean, why not now? Why not now? So we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. I Spit in Your Grave is a rape revenge film and is notorious for being maybe one of the most brutal. I'm sure there's some seedy little films that have kind of never had any press that are probably worse, but notorious. It was one of the biggest films on the video nasties list in the early 80s in the UK.
That makes sense.
It was banned for decades. It was finally released on DVD in the UK in around 2003ish, but it was cut by I think like 4 minutes. There was like 4 minutes of like edits on it to get it, and that was with an 18 rating. That was like the highest rating, but it's still cut by 4 minutes. And then I believe I found out just as I was looking it up today, it was re-released again in the UK in 2011, which was a fuller version, but not uncut. Still, it still had like 2 minutes worth of material taken from it. So as of yet, it's still not technically available in the UK uncut. Which is interesting because for my viewing, this is the first time I watched the uncut version. I watched the director's cut of this. But the first time I saw this, which was a long time ago, was the cut UK DVD. So I don't remember it well enough to sort of know exactly what parts were added or were missing the first time. It was all from the sex stuff. It was all from the violence. It was none of it was from the back half where the revenge stuff happens.
Oh sure, yeah. They didn't just cut off 3 or 4 minutes of her in the cabin writing.
No. No, it was very specific shots and moments during the actual assault, which were cut.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the sex stuff. It was more of a pacing issue that they wanted
to. So we'll get into it. So do be warned, we're going to be talking about a movie that has a lot of sexual violence in it, and more than we've ever talked about before. So brace yourself, and we'll try and keep this our usual entertaining selves, but not at the expense of making light of the actual activity itself that's going on in the movie. But so I mean, the movie's pretty straightforward. We're introduced to our main character of Jennifer as she's leaving New York City, and she's going to a cabin. It's very The Shining almost. She's going to a cabin for the summer to write her book. She's a writer, and we don't actually find this out until a little bit later, but she writes for a magazine, but she wants to write her first novel. So she goes out for this secluded sort of house, this lake house, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and she wants to write her book. And of course, a group of men kind of take notice of her and ultimately attack her. Brutally rape her for a long time as well. That section of the movie is a good 25-30 minutes of sort of on and off again kind of attacks, and then the film's about her getting revenge. It's a revenge movie. It's her kind of, you know, being left for dead and then ultimately hunting them down kind of one by one. So there's not a whole lot to spoil really outside of like how certain things happen, because that's basically the whole plot. that's the whole thing. So yeah, we'll start. Had you seen this before, Tim?
Actually, I have not.
This is a biggie for you. This is your first time down the grave and the spit and everything in between.
Because like I'd obviously heard of it, and you know, like it has a great title. Like the title sticks out at you and stuff, but you know, I knew it was like a very brutal movie, so I just never really had much of a desire to watch it. You know, like if I was gonna watch it probably would have been like when I was like 20 or something and just like really wanted to, you know, immerse myself in everything. And now I kind of just like, you know, like the same old kind of like movies for the most part.
I saw this as a teenager, maybe around the age of 16, something like that, and it was in a box set that I got called Box of the Band, and it was like 6 or 7 video nasties. Anchor Bay put it out. And they had Driller Killer. It had, I think, the first Evil Dead was in there, and a few other things. And like I say, it was cut, so I didn't necessarily see the worst of what's in the movie at the time. It was still uncomfortable to watch. I remember it being uncomfortable even with the cuts. But yeah, no, the movie, like, this is a very difficult genre, because I feel like one of my complaints in film often is when they use sexual assault to just make you hate someone. At least in this case, it is very much kind of what the movie's supposed to be about. I think that a lot of the debate we have during this show today will be talking about how effective it is in actually accomplishing what it's trying to do,
right?
As opposed to, you know, because it's not like the rape's that's a quick thing to set up a villain or something like that. No, the whole movie is about that experience and then the anger that unleashes afterwards. Like, but yeah, it's still banned in several countries, by the way. Like Canada, it's banned in Canada.
No, I mean, I totally see. Like, and you know what's funny is it does remind me a little bit of Last House on the Left, which was that was a movie that I always heard was very brutal and extreme, and maybe it was at the time, but when I watched that for the first time, I thought, like, well, this is just like silly. Like, it's like, you know, there's some bad parts in it, but it really isn't like horrible. Like, I don't think it's as hard to watch as, you know, other movies. I do think this is one that lives up to its reputation of, like, you know, oh, this is like hard to watch. Like, you know, especially if, you know, I can't even imagine someone that, you know, might have been like closer to, you know, that like has had a past with these things or has known someone, you know, that's had incidents like this happen. Like, this would just be like super, you know, hard to sit through.
I feel like the entire genre is something you probably stay away from if you've had an experience like this.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I was actually surprised though, like at, especially, you know, from the time, because, you know, sometimes, you know, stuff doesn't live up to being as extreme when you think about it. But I do think this is definitely one that, you know, merits the reputation that it has, because, yeah, it is definitely not a pleasant movie to sit through, for sure.
No, it is not. So I will ask the question I always ask Tim, and I'm curious to hear your answer to this. I don't think enjoy is the right word in this case.
Sure.
How did you feel about I Spit in Your Grave?
Well, I mean, I am glad that I watched it in a way because, again, it is something that has, reputation, and it is, for better or worse, like, kind of like a well-known horror movie. So it is nice to kind of scratch it off the list, be like, okay, I've seen it, but, yeah, I definitely wouldn't say that I enjoyed it. I think there were some, like, kind of cool parts to it. Like, I was like, oh, this is cool. But I don't know. I didn't think it's hard to kind of say exactly what it's trying to accomplish. Like, is it trying to show like how, brutal and nasty this kind of thing is? Like, like is it supposed to be like, hey, like, look at the reality of what the situation can be like. So, like, you shouldn't do it, or whatever. Like, I don't know if it's trying to do something like that, or is it just trying to give you shock value? Because like if it's just like shock value, like, then it definitely feels like it goes too far. Like, like if you want it to be part of the story, there's I think more sensitive or artistic ways you can show it, but again, maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe he wants to show the kind of stark, brutal reality of what this is. But
yeah,
even if that is the case, though, it's not like something you really want to watch.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be raw and challenging, and something that doesn't shy away from the horror of what it really is. And and as a revenge movie, so the back half of the film in a lot of ways is the character of Jennifer kind of like, realizing she's on her own. She's just like, she'd rather like go after them and get help in any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, even today you hear about people not getting help they need when they report something like this. I as far as I know, the 70s was worse.
Yeah.
Like, as the further back you go, the
Yeah.
worse it gets. So,
and I mean, I wonder if that too, that might have been maybe an interesting thing to explore. Something like if she did go to the cops or something, and they kind of just, like shrugged her off, like, oh, well, what were you wearing? Or, I'm sure you were asking for it, something like that. I don't know if that might have helped kind of show the, the nature of this kind of thing. But yeah, so I do think the important part for these type of movies is definitely the revenge aspect. And it is definitely cool in the second half to see her, getting the revenge. And, so there are definitely like some moments that were cathartic to see, but I don't know, there's also some stuff that even with that like revenge part that I didn't really like, that I guess we'll get into later. But yeah, I don't know, I think a much like like a much better like example of this genre though would probably be one I think we both liked, which was revenge. Like, that's to me, like when I think of like the rape revenge kind of movies, I think that's one that like kind of handles it a little better versus this.
yeah, that's definitely more of a flashy movie though, whereas this
Sure.
is trying to kind of be just depressingly realistic in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not saying everything in it's realistic, but it's definitely going for something that feels a lot more down to earth.
Sure.
What I will say is I do think a lot of the movie's actually rather well directed.
Yes.
I think, especially knowing what the movie's about, the first chunk of it, when you're sort of like seeing the guys start to notice her, and you still there's like a tension to it. You're kind of uncomfortable because if you know this movie's reputation, the build up to it actually happening is actually really bad, arguably worse than the scenes themselves, because you in your head you're, man, how bad can this be? Like, I'm kind of worried because of the reputation, and it is bad, don't get me wrong, but like that build up for that first 25-30 minutes is, because she leaves the relative safety of the city, and she's now in the middle of nowhere, and we have these four men who are involved in this, one of whom's kind of a separate character who is presented as more sympathetic, at least to begin with, someone that she kind of befriends, and the others less so. But
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if that character is supposed to be like mentally challenged in some way or something.
I think he was, yeah. The way he spoke and the way he interacted with people definitely gave me that impression. And he almost came across as bad comic relief at first, the way, because I mean, I think that the one thing that objectively does not work in this movie that well is a lot of the acting. The acting's not particularly great.
Yeah.
I think direction is pretty solid. There's a lot of really nice sort of choices with the camera work, especially not so much during the attack itself, because the attack itself it almost gets too in your face with a couple of things where you're getting like her POV shots at various points that are kind of disturbing, but
there's one like really good scene I liked where there's kind of like there's kind of like parts to the attack, and so like there's the initial like incident, and then she's kind of like getting away, and for a while I actually thought like, oh, like maybe she's gonna escape or whatever, but then she kind of runs into the characters again, and I actually thought that was like horror wise like done really well. Like it was really kind of creepy the way like the people kind of started showing up.
Yeah, the way they came out of the scene, the way the music kind of played off of it and it cut around. Yeah, no, there's good moments like that. Even just the setup stuff where, like early on in the film, it shows you how comfortable she feels that she, as soon as she gets to the house, she immediately strips down naked and goes for a swim in the lake, and she feels comfortable doing that. She feels safe. She feels like this is the way it should be. And it's like, no, like, because a lot of the movie's about like them closing in on her world and just making her own place feel unsafe. And it kind of escalates and escalates until the attack happens. But that stuff is pretty well handled, I think. And I think the revenge stuff is pretty solid for the most part as well. Obviously, the back half of the film is a lot more comfortable to sit through because the worst is out of the way. But and the catharsis is there. It's coming. It's going to happen. But it's definitely it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Like I don't think it's necessarily something that I'm going to want to watch again.
Oh, for sure.
Like
it's not something that you like grab some popcorn and call your friends up, like, hey guys, like, what are you doing Friday night? Let's check this out.
Let's watch I Spit in Your Grave. And then again with commentary. No, the fact is, though, I'm not worried about it, because I think I saw the remake on TV like a long time ago, and it was obviously it still had the subject matter, but it was a Hollywood movie, so it wasn't like this.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not worried about the sequels to that. And the new one that came out this year for the original, even though it's a sequel to the original, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be like this. Well, at least not to the same extent.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, this is not a movie that could be made again or like duplicated,
Yeah, although that said, the director came back for it. So the original director has done the new one.
And the new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe the new one is extreme. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? So yeah, it's tough. I can't really I think there's good filmmaking going on here, and I can kind of appreciate the artistic merit of the director being like, no, I want to shock people. I want them to feel how horrific this is. I don't want to pull any punches. But ultimately, we're watching really horrific things that aren't. This isn't like when I'm watching a normal horror movie and I'm excited about heads getting bashed in and blood and stabbings and things like that. This is a very different ballpark.
And I mean, we're not really addressing something very obvious, but like I think this is probably something that'd be very different to watch if you're a woman versus a man. Like,
oh sure, yeah.
I'm myself watching it, I'm obviously
you yourself
very
are a
uncomfortable.
man, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Tim has a penis, I can confirm.
It's weird that you can confirm that, but okay. But I mean, obviously, it would be a very different experience as a woman. So it does feel kind of weird to, review it and judge it, where, I could easily see like if I'm like, hey, I don't like watching this, I'm uncomfortable or something. And then, I don't know, I would be interested in, like a women's take on this. Cause I wonder if it's, like more uncomfortable for them, or if, some people are like, oh, well, I like that, since this is something that does, unfortunately, it sucks to say, but it is something that does happen to women, and so I wonder if their point of view is like, oh, no, it's good that they show this to show that how messed up this is.
I think it varies. I think a lot of people will not want to see it at all, both men and women. I think
that makes sense.
I think some people celebrate the film because it was one of the first films that they let the victim kind of fight back after the fact, and gave her the revenge. I mean, I was looking for a different word, but the revenge. So there's that's almost the fantasy part of the film, is the idea of getting back at your attacker, which is the thing that most people don't get to do. In fact, almost none. I would hasten to say. There's probably only a very few examples in the real world of a victim of something like this actually getting to either kill or whatever to the attacker. So I guess there's that part of it, which might be something that some people do find
cathartic.
Yeah. I could see that being a thing. It's one of these things. It's such a strong subject, such a strong thing that I think I think the most common responses to this movie are, this is shocking and terrible. Why did you make me watch this? I don't want to see that. But I think there is then the subsect of people who sort of see what it's trying to do and will appreciate it for its rawness. But and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't necessarily think this should be banned. I don't think it should. Sure. It shouldn't exist. At the same time, I don't necessarily particularly enjoy watching it that much. Well, yeah, not really.
No, I mean, I think that's totally fair. But I do think, I don't necessarily like it either. But I do think it is, interesting to kind of challenge yourself with these kind of things every now and again. I mean, it'd be pretty bleak if you're only watching raw, depressing movies and that kind of thing. But I think it is, kind of especially if you're a casual movie watcher, whatever. But if you are someone that does appreciate the art of cinema, I think occasionally you do have to kind of challenge yourself with things like this. I mean, not this specific movie, but stuff that's stuff that maybe is outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and this is the thing. The movie has extended sequence. It's kind of split up because it's kind of there's one attack, and they kind of play a game of cat and mouse with her, and then there's a second attack and a third attack. And honestly, it's this big extended sequence, and it is kind of extremely. Obviously you're already uncomfortable, and it's already kind of horrific from the first attack, the first moment that anything happens. But like you said earlier, you kind of feel like maybe it's over now, and she's stumbling away, and you're like, okay, that was bad, but I don't know if it necessarily earned the reputation. But then it keeps going, and there's more, and it keeps doing more and more with it. And the thing that I think affected me, perhaps more than anything, is there's a point where they're back at the house, and there's already been 2 or 3 attacks at this point, and she starts pleading that she'll go along with it. I mean, because she was struggling before, and she was just pinned down by four men, so there was just nothing she could do. But she starts pleading to say that she will do something for him, but please not normal sex, not in the vagina, because at this point, because there's hints of blood, there's hints of they've been rough with her, and it looks she's in pain, and she's offering other things just so that they won't do it again down there. And it really, that moment of just desperation of bargaining, I think is probably the lowest point for me, just in terms of when it hits the most. But that may vary from person to person. And I you know what I mean, I guess we're in spoilers. It's kind of weird because the movie doesn't really have a whole lot to spoil outside of specific lines and stuff.
And I think some of the stuff that seemed the the hardest for me was a lot of the stuff outside, because just imagining I mean, obviously already you're in a very painful, uncomfortable situation, but just when being pinned up against a rock or something, or you're naked and you're so vulnerable, but you're also just covered in dirt and leaves, and it's probably it's probably just painful just being on those kind of surfaces and stuff. I know it's hard to imagine I don't know, being out there just seems so, I don't know, I guess I kind of like, adds to the kind of like bleakness and rawness of it, too, is, I don't know, just being out in nature and vulnerable like that.
Yeah, and it does this thing where it starts with something that feels more everyday and sort of simple, where so there's the four guys. There's the guy who works at the gas station, who's kind of the first one she meets. He's kind of friendly to her, whatever, it's not a big deal. And she goes to the house and she meets the what was his name,
like his grocery delivery guy.
Yeah, Matthew. Yeah, she meets Matthew, and he's kind of almost sweet. He's kind of like, oh, you're really pretty, and she's kind of nice to him. She kind of like goes along with what he's saying, and says we're friends now, and yada yada yada. But the other two guys, so we find out Matthew hangs out with these guys because he has nowhere else to go to, and he says that he really likes the girl he loves up in the house now, and they're cracking jokes about it, and they're making fun of him because obviously he's not someone who's been with a woman or like would do something like that. And when I say it starts off with like a really normal everyday thing that it's just a general discomfort thing that happens, is the other two guys that are there, guys 3 and 4 I'll refer to them as, they're like on a boat, just sort of they're on a boat, and they drive past her, they sail past her, she's in a hammock, she's making notes for her book, and they sort of drive past her, and they're far away enough, and they just give her a wave, and it's like, okay, innocent, they're just saying hi, no biggie. And then they come back and they're much closer, and they're just sort of staring at her the whole time, and she begins to get uncomfortable, and they're just kind of like going around in circles and making a lot of noise, and it's just like simple harassment and attention she doesn't want. And of course later on in the film, the leader, the gas station guy, he's like, he tries to say, oh, you were showing off your legs and you were sitting there in a bikini, all the usual, you were asking for it, you put yourself out there on a platter kind of thing, like all these usual lines.
Yeah, that like bullshit kind of like, well, what did you expect when you're like, hey, it's your fault for driving me crazy with your, it's like, shut up.
Which I think is the one thing that's kind of beautiful about the movie's logic, is that I think everything that happens in the back half, they were asking for it.
Oh, like, for sure. Oh, that's a good point.
They were like, they did this, they're asking for comeuppance in the most extreme way. So I like, because it does that thing, you sort of you get to see them talking about her beforehand, and then it kind of puts them off camera, and there's that moment like at night time when she wakes up because she thinks she hears a noise outside, and we're not really sure if it's one of them or whatever. It probably is. I mean, there's no one else in the movie. It could be, but and then it's the very next day that the attack happens. They just come up to her and start harassing her when she's in a little canoe, and then she's sort of the land, and then the other guys show up, and they're doing this under the guise that they're offering her to Matthew, so Matthew can have sex, and he doesn't want to, so then the others just start having sex with her one by one, and each one's separate though, because she runs away for a little bit after the first one, and that's when we get that moment you said you liked, where she runs into the one guy with the harmonica, and then the others kind of come out one by one, and it's kind of this tense sequence. But it's worth mentioning, even though this stuff's well directed, it is worth mentioning she is completely nude the entire time, so if nudity bothers you to this extent, then it is there the whole time.
And what's kind of funny is like, I don't know if they were like kind of as popular around this time, but it almost does feel like a horrifying version of what I feel like is something you would see in like kind of like comedy movies, which is like, the plot line, like, we got to get our friend laid, like it kind of feels like in a way it's almost like that, except for, this is like the, much more like, I mean, that already is kind of like not the best plot, but I mean, this is like the gross horror version of it. And and it is kind of, and it kind of adds this other level to it that's even like, I feel like even grosser, where it's like the fact that, again, like, they don't really come out and say it, but it feels, like there is something like mentally wrong with this person, that, adding on top of that, like these people are pressuring him to, engage in this thing that he clearly doesn't want to, because he's the one that's like, eventually kind of succumbs to it, but like, constantly throughout it, he's like, oh no, I can't.
Yeah. So the whole thing is just, I don't even want to describe the next chunk. Like I'm good just
Sure.
kind of saying there's lots of sexual assault and just kind of leaving it at that.
Yeah.
I described the one moment where she's kind of bargaining, because I think that part's important. But like,
Yeah. And again, I'm not going to go into details, but I was surprised at again just how much they showed. Because I feel like even in other movies where you see this kind of thing, you're still usually not like looking directly at it, like like it might be implied, or they might cut away, or you kind of see it from like a distance or in shadows or something like that. This is very again adding to what they probably want to do with showing off just how unsavory and up close and stuff it is, but they're like you're right there watching it like with it's tough.
Including very uncomfortable close-ups. So when Matthew's on top of her, there's like when she opens her eyes, there's a close-up of his face, like right in the camera, right in her face, and that's very uncomfortable. After they leave, basically it's like, okay, we kind of have to kill her because she can kind of like turn us all in. So they try and make Matthew to go kill him. They give him a knife. It's like, well, if someone's going to get done for a murder, it may as well be him, because we can maybe still get away with it. I mean, they don't wait for him, admittedly. I thought they were going to leave him behind, like he was worried about, but he can't do it. He doesn't again have the balls to kind of to kill her. So he just kind of like wipes some of her blood that's like on her face onto the blade, so they'll think he's done it. And I'd kind of forgotten this chunk of the movie from memory, which is like there's a bit of time where we see them like hanging out in a diner and kind of talk about it's weird how no one's like found a dead body in 2 weeks. Like it's not in the papers, no one's talking about it. What's going on? And we know she's alive. We see that she's we see her crawl to the bath and clean herself, and we see that she's still writing and whatever. And she even like spies on them a little bit. We see that the main gas station guy's got a wife and kids, and we see other things around her. She's spying on them, and we don't really get a whole. I was going to say, we don't get a whole lot of like her planning anything. We don't really know what she's thinking. We know that she goes to church and she sort of asks for forgiveness, and we're like, forgiveness, because obviously you're like, forgiveness for what? You were attacked. Why are you asking for forgiveness? But it's more about what she's about to do rather than what she has done.
And I think that is kind of interesting though too, because I do feel like there are like some religious people that probably would blame the victim like that, but I do think it is interesting though, like in those kind of scenes where it's juxtaposition of like how sadistic and evil and brutal these people are, and how like they're able to just kind of go on with their lives afterwards. When
they're sitting at the diner, there's a point where you're a little bit worried about what may happen, and gas station guy, I think his name's Johnny, he's like he's basically trying to cheer him up. He's like, hey, smile, it's not so bad. We'll have to make sure you smile again, because we might go get some pretty girls later. And he's like, yeah, you're right. And he's trying to cheer him up after what they've done. And it's kind of it's really displaying what this event meant to them versus what it meant to her. Her life has completely been ruined and changed, and she's forever going to have to live with this. But of course she then enacts a plan, which is the rest of the movie, and we're in spoilers, by the way. If that wasn't clear, I said we were, but right. I'm making it very clear right now, we're in full spoilers. So she puts in a call for more groceries to be delivered, which is how she met Matthew in the first place. And Matthew, and again, this is where I like the direction in the script, is that he's at the store and he's like stocking shelves, and his boss says, hey Matthew, you have to take some groceries to this house, and it's her house, and he just like looks scared shitless. And him like going to the house on the bike and like riding up, like this was genuinely really good. Like he's scared of he's the only one out of them who's actually scared of her. And he kind of comes out and she kind of seduces him. She uses her, and again, this is kind of thematic for the movie. She uses her sexuality to lure him in, because he actually gets a knife and he's going to try and stab her, because it's like, oh, they hate me now. Because when they find out she's not dead, there's a scene of them all beating him up because he wouldn't kill her, because he didn't kill her. And like he's going to do it, and she's like, no, and she's like opens her robe, and she's naked, and she's like, no, Matthew, I want you here, and she kisses him, and she goes in, and they even have sex. Like he's on top of her, and she's full on lured him in using sex.
And I think it's because I think the first time that he was doing the thing, like they
you can say it, Tim. You're avoiding the words. The first time he was raping her, yes, he couldn't finish.
Yeah, so that was like a thing that was coming up, or has like come up before, where he's talking about like, oh, like I didn't even get to come, and then and then this is kind of the part of him or her trying to seduce him, and she's saying like, oh, like even let you finish this time, or you'll be able to finish this time, or whatever.
Yeah. But as he's on top of her, she pulls out a noose that she had ready, like sort of set up, and puts it around his neck, and then pulls on this other end of the rope, and it basically hangs him in the tree. He's hanging, and his pants are down at his ankles, and he's hanging there, and then she puts him into the water, puts his bike into the water, and she makes a phone call to the grocery store afterwards to cover her tracks and say, hey, I ordered some food a while ago. Why is it not here? Yeah. That's the first kill down. That's the first one, and Matthew's a really troubling character, like you say, because he is pressured into it, but he still ultimately does it. He still, and I mean, maybe we could get into a whole debate if he represents kind of like almost the young and how they're influenced by older males into this kind of behavior. But I don't know. I don't know if that's actually intentional, if I'm just trying to read into it. But he's still guilty. He's still ultimately guilty.
I think the problem is like making him, and again it's hard to say what the movie is trying to say about him, but like if he is, I think it does feel murkier if it is someone that's like mentally challenged, because then you can kind of make assumptions or arguments about how much exactly he was like kind of cognizant of like what he was doing. Like obviously he seems to know what was wrong, but what are the differences with that kind of state of mind, and then when you're being like pressured like that, it's I don't know, I feel like maybe it would have been handled better if he didn't come across that way, but he was just maybe more of like a nicer, more innocent person that just had doubts but eventually was forced into it, versus like a potentially a grown person with potential like limited mental capabilities. I don't know, it's very weird.
Yeah, it's definitely murky. There's no denying that. I do think the kill order is a little bit weird, because I thought it was weird that she goes after the gas station guy next and leaves the other two who, because she leaves them till last, and I feel like the gas station guy was the big bad.
He feels like the main guy, like because like you said with the other two, they kind of just seem like guy 2 and 3, like they don't you don't really remember their names and their personalities, so it does seem like the order is a little strange. I will say I do like that with like her first kill and stuff. It's like again I guess kind of mirroring like what happened with her attack, where she's like all bloodied and dirtied and stuff, and naked and in the woods, but like when she's seducing him, she's like wearing this very like kind of like like this nice little like nightgown robe kind of thing, and she's like very done up and has makeup on, so it's looks like the kind of the exact opposite of where she was before, and it's almost like haunting in a way, like almost seems like ghost-like or something, like when she's kind of like seducing them. But I think the one thing that I kind of like, obviously it does feel great when you see her get her revenge, like that's what you want in the movie, like her really taking it to these guys and stuff. But the one thing I'm kind of not crazy about, and I get how it like fits thematically and everything, but I don't know, it always seems weird to me when it's like, like you've been through such a traumatic experience, like, but then your revenge also like includes this weird like sexual part. Like it feels weird to even give them like that kind of like pleasure of, seducing them and stuff. I don't know, that always kind of seems weird for me. I don't know if it's just
well, I think it's two things. I think thematically it ties into the idea of using the sex as a weapon, like using it back to hit back. But then I think it's also this idea that she is so broken or so changed by the events that, the like, I don't want to say the fear, but it's almost desensitized her to the act itself, so she can use it as a weapon, in a way that she couldn't have done before, kind of thing. Because next is the gas station guy, and she goes and just sits in a car with him and sort of insinuates that he should get in. He gets in, and they get to some random place, and she pulls a gun on him, and he's like, hey, you don't have to force me, like, I'll do it. And he actually at one point says he doesn't like women telling him what to do, which is greatly like ironic. Oh, you've only been forced into something? Oh, what a shock. And she eventually drops the gun, but I actually like, probably the best part of the acting of the whole movie is her here, is Jennifer, Camille Keaton here, because he this is where he tries and justifies his actions. He tries to justify everything by saying, oh, you came, you showed off your legs, you weren't wearing a bra, you blah 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 blah. And any man would have done the same thing. This is just what happens if you put yourself out there like that. This is what you wanted, you did. And she just sort of stands there and she drops the gun, and the look in her face of just like, it's almost like the reassurance that she's doing the right thing, that the only thing that's going to work here is to actually absolutely destroy them, because like the way he thinks is just irreparable. She's like, hey, let's go and have a bath, I'll give you a scrub in the bath. So, and she makes small talk with him. She talks to him about Matthew, about his kids, and she gets in the bath and she's giving him a hand job, but as she's doing it, she's saying, hey, no, Matthew's missing because I killed him. And he's like, oh, you've got a weird sense of humor. And again, talking about her using the sex as a weapon and sort of luring him in, like how stupid is this guy that he is falling for this? And this is the thing, I don't think it's unbelievable. I think it is believable. I think it is believable that he has the hubris to think that even after what he did, that she liked it and she wants more, and that she would do this for him, and that it's not like a plan to do something else. It never occurs to him that this is a ruse. It never occurs to him that she's got something up her sleeve, or under the bathroom mat, as the case may be.
Oh yeah, no, totally. And I think, unfortunately there are like idiots whose brains probably work like this, where they think like, oh yeah, like, eventually she liked it. And like, then this is kind of probably just like reaffirming that, like, oh, hey, I guess I was so good that like, yeah, she's probably coming around or something. And it's, that is like an interesting little, like look into his psyche.
So, this is probably the most famous scene in the movie because she cuts off his dick. And I actually kind of like how this is filmed, because you just like you sort of like feel the slice of it happening, and you just see like the water becoming red. And he, for the first couple of seconds, I do kind of like that he's like, oh, that kind of hurt, but it still feels nice. Like it's not really sunk in yet what's happening.
I like that it takes like a minute. Like I think he says something like, oh, that's good, and then he says like, oh, it's like so good it's painful, and then that's when the blood starts coming up and you realize like, oh shit, like and then I like that she doesn't just like instantly kill him and put him out of his misery. She locks him in the bathroom, which I think probably just means he's gonna just end up bleeding out and dying. But I like that it's just not like a quick easy death for him. Oh yeah, he probably suffers more than any of them, and that's probably just. But no, I love the effect of it, because he kind of stands up and he's holding his hands over his crotch, as one would do if the dick was just cut off. But I love that he's clearly squeezing something in his hand to squirt out blood occasionally, and it made it look really good. It looked really gnarly because of that. So no sympathy for him, but I think every man watching this, again, you talked about the difference between a man and a woman watching this scene. I think all the men watching this scene just kind of like, just close the legs a little bit tighter. Just protect the goods a little bit more. Just on instinct.
But yeah, so, and then it's basically she's in the hammock, and again, I like this because it kind of comes full circle where she's kind of luring these two guys in, because it was these two guys, number 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, whatever we're calling them, who were harassing her by driving past on the boat at the start of the movie, right? So she's basically sitting out in the hammock again in her bikini to lure them in. And they kind of come back and forth, and they want to deal with her, and she then ends up harassing them. She ends up like driving the boat around one of them when he's in the water. The other guy tries to defend him and get an axe, but she ends up getting the axe off of him and swiping him in the back. And then the final guy gets the rudder basically right in him. She turns on the engine as he's right at the back of the boat, and we just see lots and lots of blood coming up from the water. And yeah, and it took me off guard how the credits just kind of start playing as she's driving away in the boat, and she's still there on the screen and the credits are playing before it fades to black. So yeah,
I like the I'm okay with the like ideas for these kills, but I think I mean, one, like you mentioned earlier, it does feel a little anticlimactic after the, you know, what kind of feels like the big scene in the movie. And then also, I don't know, it seemed like maybe just it was kind of awkward the way it was kind of shot and like cut between and stuff. Like I don't know. It wasn't like like again, like obviously like I'm happy she's getting revenge on these people, and like the idea of like the, you know, propeller, especially like, you know, he's really begging at that point, and you know, like you mentioned earlier, it kind of mirrors like, you know, when she was begging earlier in the movie, and like so like, you know, that the idea of that kind of, you know, coming up, but again, it just seems like maybe, I don't know, it could have been done a little better, or you know, maybe switched it around in the movie or something.
Yeah, I'd definitely put gas station guy last, because it's more of a climax, it's more of a big moment. This was the harshest one. As far as the weird cutting around and the boat stuff goes at the end, I feel like that was probably just because they were working around what they could and couldn't show in terms of what you know, like they didn't have,
that makes sense,
however many effects they had, or if they had water, you know, practical effects
it just, budget. I don't know. It feels like weirdly like a lot of like back and forth. Like it's not like, you know, she's in this boat, they're in the water, and it's not like she just goes right to it. It feels like there's a lot of like circling around and then kind of cutting back to the boat driving, then back to the person, then back to the person on the shore, and then the boat driving again. And it's like it didn't really come together for me. There's
a lot of looking at the front, you know, point of the boat as it's turning. There's a lot of shots like that. Maybe it's a little overstuffed in that sense.
But I mean, like you said, though, I'm sure, you know, this definitely wasn't like easy, you know, stuff to film. So, and makes sense, but it's not the best when you're looking at it.
Yeah. So I mean, that's basically the movie. It's a weird one because, kind of like we were saying earlier, it's probably something that all horror fans should see at some point.
Sure.
Just to cross it off the list. That said, I mean, if you feel especially sensitive to this material, this type of material, then by all means stay away. I don't think you're missing some, like, you know, important film if you don't see it. But if you are a horror fan, you're sampling, you know, all the classics, and, you know, good and bad, whatever they may be. It feels like it should be in that list, and it is challenging. It may make you think about things a little bit more. And like I say, I think the general idea of like her being like harassed and feeling less and less safe beforehand is pretty good. And afterwards, the way it kind of mirrors some of that stuff, and the way she goes after them, and the way she uses tactics or the way she uses incidents that kind of like earlier to trap them or lure them in is pretty good. But yeah, as a big uncomfortable section to get through in the middle, well, kind of early middle, and you know, it is what it is. I don't imagine I'll watch it again unless I've got some particular reason to, but I don't imagine me ever going, oh, I feel like watching I Spit in Your Grave.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I was like a little surprised because I thought it was going to be like sleazier. Like it was, like it's still not, fun to watch, but it does feel like it has more of a point to it. Like it's not just trying to win you over from the like, shock factor or whatever. I don't know exactly what the intentions are, but it does seem to maybe be more of a kind of real life, like, hey, this is what this act is and does and looks like and stuff, versus like something where it's just trying to be like a sleazy midnight movie to get people like like, oh yeah, I'll go see that to see some nudity and violence and stuff like it. I was like a little surprised that it wasn't as much of that as I thought, but I mean, it's still definitely a tough watch though.
Yes, but there was more craft than you were expecting, and maybe more of a point. Yeah. So with that comes the difficult task of rating I Spit in Your Grave.
Let's see. I think, it is definitely tough because, there's merit in the filmmaking, although it's not perfect. There are definitely, instances like, like you kind of saying before that, where you're like, oh, like that shot looks good, or like, oh, that's like an interesting, like a way to take this or whatever.
Yeah, there's genuine tension. There's genuine tension in how the scenes, some of the scenes play out.
But then I think there are like definitely like some stuff that's not great, and not, I'm just talking about like filmmaking stuff, not like the subject matter or whatever. And it is a tough watch, but still kind of interesting. And again, if you like to challenge yourself with stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, I think it definitely does a good job of that. But again, it's like hard to say that I necessarily had a ton of fun or enjoyed it, but I am glad I saw it. So I think I am going to give it a 6 out of 10, because there's aside from like uncomfortable subject matter, can't really think of much that's like necessarily like wrong or bad about it.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Also, I just noticed that the two kids that were in the movie, their last names are both Zarchi, which is the director's last name. So that's the director's kids, most likely.
Oh, okay.
or maybe nephew and niece. But the two kids that you see in that one scene, that's the director's family. Probably his kids, I would guess. Yeah, I don't know what I would rate it. Because it's actually, I think it's, some of the acting's pretty rough, but it is pretty well made from a directorial point of view, and there is some genuine tension. It does feel like it has a point, and it's, arguably, is it the right way to go about making that point? I think that's a debate that you could have. But it is trying to do something. It is trying to be this kind of shock piece to kind of show the horror of this, but give some catharsis for it at the same time afterwards. So, yeah, I think 6 is pretty fair. I'll agree with 6. But, I think if... I don't want more sheen necessarily, but, just a bit more gravitas is maybe what I want to make it really work. Ultimately, I don't know, like is a Rape Revenge movie for me ever going to be like a great movie? I don't know. Like, I think ultimately the subject matter kind of pins it down a little bit because of what we're dealing with.
No, it's it's a very hard subject to tackle, and again, I guess it's kind of a debate. Is it something that unfortunately, as long as it is something that still happens, I think it is worth talking about and making it known. But I mean, yeah, it's like how exactly do you like represent that? I do think like Revenge, it was like a really good, entertaining movie. That's a good example of it. I don't know if you have ever seen Dangerous Men, but that is a bad example of it.
I have not, but sounds interesting.
it's a fun movie to watch. It's like a I have the Blu-ray of it. It's because it's one of those The Room kind of movies that's so bad. And I think like the person that made it took him 11 years or something. Like it's just some like dude that was just making it like in his spare time when he could. But it's there's some crazy stuff in that movie.
Yeah. I guess just something a bit more classy. I don't know if a 70s exploitation film, about this subject was ever going to be a complete home run. But at the same time, there's an argument to be said that maybe 70s exploitation was the perfect home for something like this at the time.
Sure.
Because of the type of movie it could be and what it could cause in terms of reactions.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but hey, so yeah, somewhat, we're in the positive side of the scale because there is some talent here, but know what you're getting into before you watch I Spit in Your Grave. I would never just throw it on in front of someone.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like again, if this is something that you're uncomfortable with, I don't think there's necessarily a like if you get triggered by this kind of thing, I don't think it's worth putting yourself through it. But I think if you are going to watch something with this subject matter, this is at least a better, like, feels less, exploity or sleazy than I'm sure a lot of other examples could be.
Yeah, go watch Unbelievable on Netflix. 8-episode series based on a true story.
Oh jeez.
that was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Okay.
So it's got Toni Collette in it. So the whole thing. Anyway, so that has been us talking about I Spit in Your Grave, and that has been Streams After Midnight. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching the scary movies, guys. And we'll see you next time.